So, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm also not scripted for this episode. I simply wanted to respond to what I saw a couple weeks ago whenever I found out that there was a leaked document from the U.S. Supreme Court that apparently the conservatives on the panel are planning on essentially removing abortion from the federal level. To anyone that actually read the document, you would find out that the vote is going to be done in removing from the federal level, meaning that states can still decide whether or not they would allow abortion in their states. And considering how polarized America is right now, basically most of the red states would probably be anti-abortion and blue states would be pro-abortion. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, it's time for what I have to say. I am completely pro-life and anti-abortion in every aspect there is able to be. I wanted to be able to say this. I decided to take last week off because it was both the birthday weekend of the twin friends of mine and it was Mother's Day, so I wanted to just enjoy as much time as I could with friends and family. That being said, I decided to throw my hat in the ring with this response video because, well, I despise it, and I know I'm going to be despised for daring to speak against a world that treats its future progeny like medical waste. And, well, here we go. Now, for all the people who are going to obviously want to make the emotional appeal by saying that we need to keep abortion legal because rape and incest and other such problems that might affect the woman in question. Well, here's a lovely little chart that I found, link in the description, and let's find out something interesting. According to the survey done by, who is the one who did the survey? The Guttmacher, I hope I'm saying that right, Institute, the Guttmacher Institute. According to them, out of the 100% of abortions done, specifically with Planned Parenthood, 0.39%, less than half of 1% of all cases for abortion are because of rape and incest. Then there's 1.14% of abortions that are done because they are necessary, quote unquote, to save the life of the mother in question. Now, I remember somewhere finding a article that talked about how there are multiple surgeries that are able to be performed to actually prevent the necessity of such an abortion. I can't remember the number, and unfortunately I can't find the link because whether I use Google or Bing, whenever you type in surgeries to prevent the necessity for abortion, it doesn't show up. How based. Anyway, let's look at this chart one more time. Then there's 0.69% are for fetal birth defects or eugenics. Gotta love that word considering where it came from. Anyway, and then there's, what's this? 1.28% to preserve the mental health of the mother. I find that fascinating because anyone who would try to use that argument doesn't want to talk about the fact that don't seem to hear the pro-choice people talking about that. So, if you add up all those percentages, that means that 3.5% of all the reasons why people get abortions, women specifically, unless you want to count birthing persons, but I don't. Anyway, 3.5% of women getting abortions in America, specifically America, are for what you would call the hard cases, while 96.5 are getting abortions for personal reasonings, aka I don't want to have the child after having sex. And I do not care who that offends. Now, my question to you is, if you're going to say that the necessity of abortion is because of rape and incest, then I have a question. In the words of Ben Shapiro...
So, if we can first stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, then we can talk about that other one. Can we do that? Are all the other abortions bad, or are those ones okay? And you're just using this as an excuse to make the other ones okay.
Now, as for the issue of rape, I, want to say, no, I don't agree with rape, and honestly, anyone who engages in rape should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I also will say that false rape accusations need to be fully investigated before someone decides to simply ruin another human being's life. As for the child, I think that it's best to acknowledge that we shouldn't decide to simply murder a child simply because they're innocent in all of this. You don't decide to murder somebody simply because they are the product of a bad decision and a bad, terrible tragedy that happened. So that's already my acknowledgement of rape. And as for the people who have been raped, I encourage you, let this child live. This child can grow to become something great. This child can be the thing that you will love, even if the person who fathered this child is an evil, horrible person. This child should not be defined by the terrible choices of the father. I encourage you, and I appeal to you, let this child live. And as for the people who are going to get on my case about all of this, my response is simply to say, I'm not surprised, considering this is also not the first time a group of people have decided to not see the humanity of other people. Blacks are not people, they're property. United States Supreme Court decision, 1857. The Jews are not people, they are vermin to be eradicated from the face of the earth. The Nazi Party, 1930s and 40s. Babies are not people while in the womb. They are bundles of cells, so you can mutilate them to make sure they don't become a problem. And speaking of problem, when I was younger, I was told that there are all kinds of people who can be seen as heroes because they are the ones who started out in bad conditions and terrible circumstances, and that despite the hardships that are stacked against them, they rose to the occasion and beat the odds. They went the distance, and they went to become the inspiring heroes that we think of today. And you can insert whoever you want into that. Insert here. But I have a story I wanted to tell about one circumstance that I know personally. Back in February of 1993, there was a woman who was involved in a car incident. She had x-rays done to make sure she was well and that everything was okay. A month later, midway through March, she went to go have blood work done because she was having a period that lasted a little longer than normal, and the doctor asked her, "Are you pregnant?" She said no. As she was literally leaving the hospital, a nurse flagged her down, saying that she needed to go back to the doctor and talk to him about what was going on, only to find out, yes, she was pregnant. She was indeed pregnant with a child. She was also told that she needed to be careful because what she was undergoing would need to have her stay in bed, that she needed to stay in bed to make sure the child survived, existing in the womb. Sometime over the summer, this woman underwent series of blood spouts that happened at random moments. She would just randomly have blood flow from her genitals completely randomly to the point where she would be terrified that she might lose the child. The doctor that she knew, originally back from February and March, was on vacation at the time, and a different doctor was prescribed to her. This doctor, when given the information about what she was undergoing, simply gave the advice of, "Oh, don't worry, hon. The baby is simply the size of a raisin. It'll just pass so easily if you have a miscarriage." The woman decided to ignore the advice of the female doctor and continued to stay in bed other than having to use the restroom or feed her older child that she already had. Eventually, this doctor came back from his vacation and was informed of the previous doctor's advice. The male doctor simply said that he did not condone the advice or information of the previous doctor and that he highly advised that she continue maintaining her strict regiment of staying in bed to maintain the health of the child. Then, in September of 1993, I was born. Yes, that child was me. That woman was my mother. So I have a question. Considering my mother was willing to stay in bed to do what she had to keep her child, she was willing to see life. She was willing to do what she had to do. And I've come a long way to take care of her in return for the past 28 years of my life. So why is abortion a touchy issue for me? Because at one point there were people who didn't see me as life. They didn't see me as human. That I was just waste, ready to be flushed. Why should I see their humanity? But in the end, I do. I see people with sick minds who agree with terrible ideas, and they need to repent while they have the chance. That's my message to you and to anyone watching this video who is in agreement with pro-choice. Because let's be honest, the one choice you don't agree with is when the woman has the child. Because if you truly believed in abortion being necessity for all things, you wouldn't focus on the small percentages rather than focusing on the bigger percentage. You use emotional appeal, not logic. And the small amount of logic you do use can be debunked very easily. So in the end, I say this: abortion is wrong. And for all the people who will say the baby doesn't feel pain, yes it does. A heartbeat exists after 18 days. The body can feel and know it's not your body. Anyone who uses the argument that it's your body, it's the woman's body, is already using emotion, not logic. It's not your body, it's a body growing in you. And for all the people using no uterus, no opinion, just remember it was a bunch of people that had no uteruses whatsoever to make the agreement of Roe v. Wade in the first place back in the 70s. So the very idea of all of a sudden agreeing with such a sexist philosophy nowadays is very hypocritical. And besides, don't you know, apparently according to identity politics, men can get pregnant, but we call them birthing persons because no one can define what a woman is. Welcome to Biden's America. And for all the people who are wanting to use the argument of, oh, you only care about the baby when it's in the womb and don't want it to be executed, but then ignore all the issues that are happening to children around the world while they're alive, I have this response. It's not that we ignore children, it's that we want to offer them the opportunity of life. We want to offer them the opportunity to have a chance. Because as I mentioned earlier, there are all kinds of people in the world who have started off in terrible circumstances and rose to the occasion. choosing to deny them the opportunity of such a thing simply because they might be a burden to somebody is not an excuse. All children are burdens. Just like a pet would be a burden, a roommate would be a burden, a spouse could be a burden, or a lover. All kinds of things can be burdens and problems. Don't see you have an issue with that, but then again, we do put murderers in prison. So the truth is, there are those who believe in the idea of creating welfare programs for children who are, well, born in those circumstances. But then again, look at the welfare state in the black community and how it's basically destroyed that community. That's one of the reasons why conservatives are not so quick to want to initiate that kind of idea. And I'm also one of them. It doesn't mean it wouldn't be possible. But my point still stands. That's not an excuse. They can have the opportunity to rise to the occasion, and choosing to make an excuse is evil. So that's what I have to say on that. Anyway, I wanted to make my opinion known, and I voice it now. I'm going to be on hiatus for a while. I'm going to go take care of a few things, but I'll eventually be back on YouTube to continue voicing my opinions and saying all kinds of things. But until then, God bless, good journey, Christ loves you, and take care.